Good evening, race fans, and welcome to weekend 10, the final weekend of the Herd Summer Racing League. Tonight, we have 6 laps of the Champs-Elysees in Paris, and that's going to be 6.6k per lap, and that'll bring us up to a total of 42.8 kilometres. We're expecting it to be fast and furious up front. Got riders in the B, C, and D categories as per usual. And we've got in the com box, we've got Ian McClaverty following D's, Gordon Sloan following the B's, and myself, James Bailey, following the C's. We'll quickly switch over to Ian and find out who he's following.
We're following James Morgan tonight, who's racing late night in the UK for the first time, I think, in the series. Unfortunately, John Richardson hasn't made it in this race, which would have been a good head-to-head for the final race of the series, but unfortunately, he's not been able to make it. A few other familiar faces, William and Freddie. So I'm sure there'll still be a good race. There's around about 10 D riders in this, so I'm sure it'll be fast and furious, which is what the Champs-Elysees is in real life as well. So we've got about 45 seconds until the race starts.
Ian, I think we're expecting to see a few yellow jerseys in the pen tonight. Are we expecting the rest of the riders to respect the yellow jersey?
You would, well, by the look of it, no. But it would have been nice to see some yellow jerseys. Just got 15 seconds now, so I'm sure everybody's just starting to lift the tempo a little bit. It's normally fast and furious, and I'm sure tonight's race won't be any different. 5 seconds to go. I can see everybody pedaling harder and harder, and we're off. Not
crazy start or not crazy start?
Not too crazy, actually. I was just about to say not too crazy. It's we've got a good group of about 20 people. They all seem to be forming lines down either side of the road, which seems to have happened since the last update. But I'm sure as soon as we hit the actual Champs-Elysees, we'll get one line and one group, and we'll be able to get a good idea of exactly the lay of the land and how it's all going. All the regular faces are up at the front, so I'm sure this will be a tactical race right from the start. But it is a long way to go, and there are some long slopes to negotiate as we move on up to the Arc de Triomphe. There's a long slog all the way up there, so I'm sure come laps 4, 5, and 6, there will be some testing of legs.
Yeah, so just on that note, let's quickly talk about, of course, I mean, obviously it's the Champs-Elysees. We've got the going up towards the Arc de Triomphe. Talking about choke points. We've got a 3% hill heading up most of the way to the Arc, and I think that's going to be a good opportunity for our let's say lighter riders to have a good crack. And then obviously going back down the other way, then the heavier riders will have a bit of an advantage as well. As we come down to the bottom end of the course, also we've got a couple of little ramps where there could be opportunities for a mini attack. But I think in general we are definitely going to be looking at large bunches, but we might see a little bit of the split on the climb up towards the Arc de Triomphe. But I've personally I've done a couple of races on this course. I've done a 1 lap and a 6 lap. The key point from my end is, yes, obviously stay together on the hill, but you've got to be really, really careful just after you crest the hill, because it's very easy to relax, and then you can see gaps appear if you do take it a little bit too easy once you hit the flat. But just quickly back to Ian, how are we looking at in the Ds? Are we seeing lots of groups?
Well, there's a group of 9 people in the front, and of those 9 people, I think there's 6 or 7 of them that are actually on Swift Power. So it's starting to form this around about a 15-second gap to the group behind. So the whole field has been split into 2 groups. All the usual candidates are the people who we were expecting are in this front group, which again makes it for a good race. James has just taking his lead on the front. They're all sat with their, I think, their aero wheels. The majority of them to sit. I think it's about speed. There are some short hills, There is one long slope, as I mentioned before, but it's I think it's all about trying to get the speed up and keep the speed
How
up.
big's the field tonight, Ian?
The field is in total, it's around about 15 people in the decap, and I think there, as I said, I think there's 10 people on Zwift Power as well.
Yeah, looking at the entries for C, we're already over 50. So it looks like a really big turnout for this race for Category C, and we're about a minute and a half away. And I think we're going to expect probably a big group of about probably 30, 40, certainly until we hit the first climb. And but basically, the landmark you want to look out for it's a roundabout, and then the terrain starts ramping up a little bit to about 3-4%. I think we see 5% at times. But we've got a minute to go here in the Cs, so not too long. But we'll just quickly touch back with Ian, and then we'll come back for the C start.
Yep, we've safely negotiated the tunnel for the first time, and we're just heading back round to the actual the main Champs-Élysées route up to the Arc de Triomphe. I'm sure we'll quickly fly around there and then head back down and do it all again.
Several times.
Yeah.
We are 30 seconds away from the Category C start. Tonight we're following Nathan Home, apologies. Nate he's a relatively new joiner in the herd. I think we're probably talking about sort of 3 or 4 months, but he's definitely got into the swing of things, entering all sorts of races we've been putting on. And we've got 5 seconds to go. 3, 2, 1. It's lights out and away we go. And Nathan's putting down 500, 600 watts. Definitely going big at the start. Maybe too big, but we'll certainly see before too long. It's him and one other rider out front, but we'll expect everyone to blob back in fairly quickly. And Nathan's dropped his pace down to about mid 300s. Still actually pushing out 400 again. But there's an enormous blob just behind him, and I expect it all to blob up very, very quickly. We've got one rider just off the front, a Japanese rider, T. Konjo. But we're now seeing Nate with 3 other riders, and they're just getting back towards the Japanese guy. And I've got Bowser in there as well, as ever, live streaming on Twitch and YouTube. And the field is a tiny bit strung up. There's definitely no gaps, and this is all going to group up pretty quickly. And now we can see Nathan in a group of 10 plus, and yeah, everyone's all grouping back up again. We've maybe got a mini gap just down to the group behind, and this may even pull out, but just pulling out the ramp before we do a quick swing left, and then before too long we will be onto that 3% climb. Ian, just going to swing back to you and find out how the Ds are getting on.
Yep, 2 or 3 of them have actually gone for the sprint, surprisingly, but it has split the group up into 2.
No one ever reads anything I write on Facebook, so that's completely understandable.
I'm just trying to send them messages just to remind them that the sprints don't count, but they've just come back together now. So they're now just hitting that 1%, which I think goes all the way up to about a 3% climb, all the way up to the Arc de Triomphe. So I'm sure there'll be more action as they come back down the hill again.
Yeah, so just coming back to the Cs, we've got a group of, I would say, probably 25, maybe 30, and then there's a gap back to, looks like, just going by the map on Zwift, it looks like probably a solo rider, and then there's another group a little bit further back. But just calling out a few names I've seen, we've got Mark Morgan, Lisa Jones, Michael Bowser's in there as well. Rob Homer, who we were chatting to just before this race on Discord, he's racing pretty much midnight in the UK. I'm sure we'll see a few others as we go along. There's a few people. Alan Chevel's in there. Simon S., whose surname I can never remember. But yeah, we've got a good herd showing up here at the moment, and we're just pulling up a ramp. And when I said earlier, we're just about to turn left to go up towards the hill. Obviously, I was talking absolute garbage, and we're just navigating the bottom section of the course. So this time, I promise you, it's not going to be too long until we start heading up towards the hill. But we've got a little bit of a way to go yet. We'll do a quick left and a quick right, and then we will head up the long straight towards the Arc de Triomphe. Gordon, have a little chat with you about who you're following tonight, and you've only got about a minute and a half to go.
We have, just under a minute and a half now. So tonight in the Bs, we're going to be following Derek Armour-Dorner. So in the B category, it looks like it's filling up nicely now. We're up to 43 riders with just over a minute to go. So, I mean, pretty much like you've both said there, we're expecting this. There's no sprints today. It's just a GC. So I think this will be a big bunch group, and then we'll just have to see how the hills play out with the tunnel and the sort of slow climb up the Arc de Triomphe and round again. Will make a bit of a difference, and that's likely to be where we're going to see splits. But just under 50 seconds to go here. Judging by the way the other groups started, I don't think it's going to be too crazy, but as long as everyone's aware it's just GC and that's what they're going for. We do have a couple of A riders in this group which might push up the pace a wee bit, but we'll find out. And there's also plenty of other riders from different teams. I can see 4 riders from the Dutch Diesel team, so whether some team tactics could have come into play as well, that will be an interesting one, see what happens. But 25 seconds to go just before we get out of here, which it might be quite interesting to where the D riders will be coming round pretty much at the same time, although I think this B group should pretty much fly away, although it might be half a chance for the D riders just to break up their own group if that's what they're looking to do. But 8 seconds to go, 7. So we'll just watch Derek come out the pens here and see how we get on, what sort of start we're going to get. As 0, and we should be off. And if we get the avatars facing the right way, some of them seem to be facing opposite way in the pen. And we're going off here at 7 watts a kilowatt. Nothing too crazy. I'm not seeing any orange or red numbers at the moment, but sort of still 4 or 5 watts a kilo out the pen until they probably settle down. And once we hit the road, we'll just see how many riders we got, which 48 riders, which having a quick check of Zwift Power, I reckon probably 30 of them are on Zwift Power, so should be pretty competitive, I would have thought. But yeah, grouping up nicely. Cut back to me in a minute and we'll see how we get on. I don't know, Ian, whereabouts are the Ds? Did they manage to catch the Ds as they came around the corner, or are they too far away?
No, they've not caught up. No, James and Freddie have split from the group and they've raced ahead. It doesn't seem to be that they're putting in a huge amount of wattage, although they're actually going downhill now. Just as I said that, they've managed to step up the wattage, but they were sat around about 2.5, and they've got themselves a gap of about 15 seconds on the 3 or 4 people behind them. And it seems like everybody's brought their TT kits. So we've got TTT kits, and we've got 2 rhinos and a falcon, all racing. So maybe later in the race, some team tactics may come out.
Yeah, so just back to the Steeds, they are long past the roundabout and they are on the hill. Pace doesn't look crazy. I mean, I'll say doesn't look crazy. Nate's holding probably around, I'd say, averaging around about 3.0. So it's not actually that mental. I think I was expecting probably 3.5 up this hill, but it hasn't been that crazy. So it could well be a lot more bunch than I'd originally anticipated. And luckily, we don't really seem to be. We've got one guy who's going for the sprint, but other than that, I think miraculously people have read what I've written on Facebook, so that's a very nice surprise to see. But we're just underneath the sprint banner. We can see the Arc de Triomphe. Got 2 guys off the front, 3 now, and it looks like they're holding maybe a second, but they're being reeled back in by the bunch. So it's looking like we're going to be all bunched up going around the other side and back down the hill. And this could well be the pattern for the next 6 laps, but we're certainly going to find out. Just approaching the Arc de Triomphe at the moment. Gordon, back to you. What's going on with these?
Yeah, the Bees, so they've settled down. They're just hitting the tunnel at the moment, just climbing out of it. And as I said, I think there's about 48 riders in this race, and I count it as probably about 38 of them in this bunch at the front. So certainly a massive group of bees here, and they will start moving fairly quickly to catch the Cs as well. But as we approach that hill, I suspect it will stretch out, and you'll find every lap maybe 1 or 2 riders drop off the back, and just as we go, it will slowly whittle down. Whether anyone actually puts serious tax in on the climbs, or that might wait till later, sort of lap 5, lap 6. But at the moment, absolutely huge group. Derek's sitting in nicely in the group, as you would do. 38 riders, you're going to get a massive draft, so there's no point pushing the pace here. There's no way you're getting it away from any of these riders. I'd wait for later in the race, just let the field thin out a wee bit and then think about it. Lap 5, or even not quite on lap 6. We should finish just coming uphill finish as well, so bit of a chance for a sprint at the end. But Derek at the moment, right in the middle of this group, looking absolutely fine. So we'll see how he copes towards the end, because there's certainly some strong B riders in this group, which we shall find out. But yeah, going along nicely, even dropping down to 2.5. But as a whole, the group's probably running along at 3.5 to 4 watts. So it will start to tire out some of this group once we hit the hill, I'm sure, in a few moments.
So the headline for Category C is situation normal, all grouped up. We are going down the 3% hill back down towards the bottom end of the course. Enormous group, no evidence of any splitting up the first climb. So looks like everyone's managed to hang on so far. But like I say, the first climb didn't look particularly brutal. Certainly, I expected there to be, like I say, more like 3.5 watts per kilo up the first hill, but it didn't look to be that bad. So maybe these guys are just seeing what's going on. See Ben Poynton in there, Lisa Jones, obviously Nate's in there as well, and a few other herd members. It's looking pretty steady so far. So whether or not that ramps up to the later stages of the race, or whether or not we're just seeing to see if anyone gets a little bit tired towards the latter laps, we'll certainly find out. But all grouped up. Over to you, Ian. What's going on with these?
Yeah, we're just coming out of the tunnel now. Freddie and James are doing really well. They're pulled out around about 26, 27 seconds now, and they appear to be stretching that lead as well, which I think if you're in that pack behind, you need to do something quite quickly, or else you are going to get left behind. From riding with James, we know that he can sit comfortably at the 2.4, 2.5, even 2.6. He's on the brink of being promoted up to a D, so I think he's sitting quite comfortably now. But it's between him and Freddie currently. Freddie's also sitting quite comfortably. I've rode with him a few times in the team time trials. He's Mr. Enthusiastic about this, and he was really looking forward to this race, knowing that James was going to be in it as well. So I think the two of them have picked each other out, and hopefully they can work with each other to eke themselves out a lead. They're now up to 30 seconds. It seems like the pack behind doesn't even want to chase. So whether the pack behind have ideas of later in the race these two are going to fall back, but I think the pace that the front two, which actually there's a front three, but there's only two of them on Zwift Power. I think the two of them will be comfortable at working together, which they are doing. They're taking turns on the front. They're just coming back onto the Champs-Élysées again. But it's just going to be a war of nutrition to see if they can stay out front. Over to you, James.
Thanks, mate. I just wanted to just have a little shout out to one of our riders from the ATP team. They've really got into this series, and one of the guys in CATC is Andy Kroll, who I think has won or placed very, very highly in the last 2 or 3 races. I think he joined quite late. He's only done 5 races so far, but he's up in this lead group as well. And we are just under the tunnel in the bottom end of the section. Then we're just going to turn left and start heading north again. Group is, probably still 20, 25 deep. Just climbing out the tunnel, then we'll swing left, and then before long we will be back onto back onto the climb again. So all groups up still. Group is, I think Nate's just at the back now, and I think there's 2 or 3 other riders. So I think we've got a group of 25, maybe 26, and Nate's just going to have to push a little bit just to get back on, but I think it's going to be fine. But yep, all looks good so far. 9 kilometers through, plenty to go. What we got, 34 to go. So when we go through the banner in a minute or so, we'll have 5 laps to go. Gordon.
Yeah, so the bees have just gone round the top of the Arc de Triomphe. Wasn't a crazy pace, maybe up the hill, but we have managed to shed 1 or 2 riders. So looks like this group is thinned down, but it's still a rather large group. Looks like 30, 35 riders maybe still in this group, still in a good pace. And you're having to hold 3+ on the back of this group, and seems to be surging a wee bit every now and more. A wee bit more, but Derek's still in there. I can see a few other riders in as well. Plenty of other hard riders in this little group. Who else do we have? And obviously David Chandler there. There's also, looks like Dylan Smith, other Chandler as well. Bruce Bortoff as well, which is near the top of the points. So large group. Looks like Paul Shuckerow's there as well. So plenty of hard riders in this group, along with quite a few others. As I said, 35 riders. Massive group, and I think we will just continue around, sort of shedding riders every lap, 1 or 2. But I suspect it will be quite a large group, and they will be approaching the seas at some point. But with such a flat course, they won't be gaining that quickly. But on that uphill, it will start to eat out on the lead in front, and possibly, I mean, we're always looking at the A riders behind as well, which there is quite a large group on the A group, but probably not quite enough to catch these Bs at the pace they're going at, because the front of this group is probably pushing certainly 4.5, and anyone that's got any sense is just sitting in the draft waiting to go. Certainly Derek, he's probably not the strongest B rider, but he's got good power so he may be able to hang on with this group. The challenge will be just to keep kicking on the hills on every lap. We'll see how we get on, but doing well at the moment. It's just sitting in the group as you were, as the other groups look like they've done as well. 7k in now, so still got a long way to go, but holding in very well at the moment, but all grouped up, and we'll approaching the tunnel probably, I don't know, about another half kilometre. Just doing that little ramp before we cut round to the left towards that tunnel. There's no one really hanging. I can see Paul towards the back of the group. I'm not sure if that's tactical or whether he will be struggling next time we hit the hill, but looks absolutely fine. We'll be in the tunnel in a couple of minutes, and then we'll see what happens then. But yeah, how's it looking, James?
Yeah, I'm trying to work out if Nate is playing the perfect game or whether or not he's struggling a little bit, because he's been at the very, very back of the pack a couple of times, and then he's sort of jumped back on, and we're now past a roundabout and heading up the hill, and he's definitely towards the front end of the group. So I think he's probably playing the long game and doing it quite sensibly. But this hill is definitely where people are pushing. So Nate's holding 4.5. Best part, well, probably averaging about 4.45 at the moment, and there are people pulling away. So I think some of the lighter riders have probably twigged that this is their best opportunity to really go for it, and there's a group of 5 just off the front now. So I don't know if this is going to last, or whether or not we're going to group back up once we do hit the flat, but we're definitely seeing it stringing out an awful lot this time round. Nathan's still pushing hard, 3.35. He's 20-30 meters away from the banner, and then it'll flatten out again as we go up to and around the Arc de Triomphe. But definitely seeing splits this lap round, and how much is going to come back together, I'm not entirely certain yet, but we've definitely got, actually, to be honest, I'm going to retract a little bit, because I think it's probably actually the A's that have flown past, so it may well have just been down to the splits in the categories, with the A's going off 15 minutes after the C's. They might well have started pretty much just behind the C's. So I think it's actually probably them that have flown by. So I think the C's are actually all together. So Nate's currently sat in eighth place, and I think I can probably see about 7 riders in front. So I don't know if any managed to hitch onto the A's. But we're definitely seeing groups reform again, and I think, to be honest, I think we're back to where we were. So apologies for that. I didn't realise the riders coming through were the A riders absolutely storming past, doing about 7-8 watts per kilo. But it's looking like we are back to where we were about 5 minutes ago. So looks to be all groups up again. Ian.
Yep. We've just got to 12.5 kilometres. We've come past the Arc de Triomphe for the second time. We're on the downhill, heading to the bottom end of the course. I think we've had quite a quiet race with the three riders in the front. That's James Morgan, Freddie Fernandez, and P. Wallace, who are sitting at a comfortable pace. They're sitting still around about 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and they're pushing it up the hills. I think the wave that has just confused James is quickly, fastly approaching us. So I hope these three riders are ready for the steam train that's going to probably come flying past them, which will be the A riders, and then maybe if any of the Bs and the Cs are holding on to them as well. So I think within maybe a few minutes, or maybe even with the A's, maybe even 30 seconds, there could be mayhem. So let's hope that the three can stick together to keep the race alive. But the gap between, which is quite difficult to see now with all the A's now appearing on the screen, but the gap was well over a minute that these three have created. So they really have done well at this early part of the race to really squeeze everybody else out of the field. And I think as long as these three can stick together, which it looks so far is what they're doing, maybe one of them can grab onto, probably not the A's, but maybe some of the C riders. If there's a nice group of the C riders coming past, then if one of them maybe could jump on, it might just get them a few hundred meters ahead of the other two. So I think when they start coming through, I think it might just get a little bit more exciting. The A's are just approaching us.
And probably flying. Just to quickly touch back on the C's, I think we did have one C rider who did briefly hang on to the A's and had about a 5 second or so lead on the rest of the C group. But it looks like they've pulled him back in again on the downhill, and we're all back together again. So quickly, let's check in with Gordon, find out how the B's are doing.
Yeah, the Bees are, so they're back on the climb back up to the Arc, and see quite a few power-ups getting thrown down now, a few certainly feather power-ups, draft power-ups. I think some of them are finding this pace pretty hot, certainly. It's starting to string out just as we go up this hill, so hopefully Derek can hang on and get that. I mean, looking at the stats on Zwift Power, it's the right mix. Some of this B group have been doing 4.1, but some of them are down to sort of 3.4, so it does show you what you can do if you can get in the draft and just stay there. But at the moment, the front of this B group is pushing. Derek's just starting to drift a wee bit. So if you can have a wee bit of a kick just to get with this group over the top will be his main goal at the moment. Because, as I said, I think we're just going to shed a few riders every lap. And even depending what power up you get, just might give you that little boost and a bit of a breather. But it's starting to flatten out at the moment. He is holding on to the back as he gets overtaken by someone on a safety bike, whether that's correct or not. But this group's still holding there. I mean, the last lap, I think we said we still had 38. Looking at the group now, we're down to looks like about 28. Maybe Paul Shuckle looks like he's probably just been dropped on that hill. We've got Justin Chandler as well, and Derek just on the back of this group. I think he's going to survive for this climb, but by the time we come round for another lap, that might be the struggle to hold on for the next climb after that. But hopefully you can get a breather, get a decent power up for the next climb and get ready for it. But this B group, I mean, they must have lost about 10 riders that lap, and I suspect that will just carry on as we are. Past one or two C riders yet, but I think we're a way off catching the main groups of Cs, so that will be a bit of time before we manage to find out and see how they get on with the Cs. But just as we're coming around the top, I thought Derek was maybe just going to drift off the back there, but he's managed to get back on as we're approaching the downhill. Still seeing more power-ups getting thrown down. Just anyone's using it just to get a bit of a breather to hold on. As you find with the Cs, it seems to be an attack point on this course. There's not really much else. Maybe if you kick strongly out the tunnel, but I think the danger is going up towards that arc and round. But Derek's looking good. He's back in the pack, so hopefully he gets a breather now for the next 5 minutes before we hit that hill again, and then I'm sure we'll see the power-ups and everyone hammering it again just to thin out this field and see how we get on. But looking good. plenty of other hard riders in this group, so I think he'll be pretty pleased with how he's getting on at the moment.
Just a quick check with Ian. It's William NG, our friend William Chow.
He's
Yeah,
the.
He
Sorry,
is,
Gordon?
yeah. No, I was just saying because he's right in the thick of this C group at the moment. He seems to be hanging on so far.
Yeah, I think
not too badly.
Yeah, he was round about a minute behind, so I think he's jumped onto this C group and has bridged the gap. That's what I was just about to say. He's now sat next to James, so we now have a three-headed race. So yeah, that's good. That's great. I think we'll see whether actually the all three of them might try to grab onto this C race, but the C's seem to be really flying along, and it will test them. And I think if they do jump onto this group, it will then be who can last the longest at that pace.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm just watching this group thinking my legs hurt already, just even thinking about racing with them. And obviously we've had a little chat amongst ourselves, and I think myself and Ian are hoping to race tomorrow evening. And I'm certainly watching these seeds averaging around about 40 kph, thinking, what have I got myself into? So we'll definitely see if the likes of James and William are able to hang on to these seeds, but I think it might be a bit of a tough ask because they are seriously shifting. But we are just about to go under the banner with 4 laps to go, and I'm just going to have a little quick power check thanks to Swift Power Live, and looks like, generally speaking, we're looking a range of around 2.9 to about 3.6 for the front seats. There's one guy who's done 3.9. Where's he gone?
Like Lure Spur. He does appear to be in the group, but he looks like a B rider. So there's a few B riders in that group that's maybe pushing up the pace a wee bit.
Well, you say that, but I think it's the C riders that are generally controlling the pace, and the B riders just sort of sat back a little bit. I mean, obviously, they'll get disqualified, so their contributions aren't necessarily relevant to the overall results, but they could have an impact on the actual pace of the group. But I think, generally speaking, it has been the C riders up front for the group, and the Bs have been sort of sat towards the front, but not actually off the front, if that makes sense. But either way, we've still got a big group here. I think we're down to probably about 20 riders, but we are heading up the hill again towards the Arc de Triomphe, and we've got a little bit of a spread, but I strongly expect that to come back together again. So, yet again, as we were, we're at 17.5 kilometers, so that gives us about 25 to go. So not a massive distance away from the halfway point, but still ticking along and doing 30 kilometers up a 2-3% hill. Dear God, what am I going to do? Gordon, what's going on with the Bs?
The Bs, yeah, so pretty much as we were, we're just literally coming out of the tunnel at the moment, so I can see 1 or 2 power-ups getting thrown down, probably more just for people to try and hang on to the group rather than make any effort to break away, but there's a few feather power-ups and truck power-ups, anything that they've got, but Derek's still in this group, still a big group. Last time I checked, it was about 28, 29 riders, so I think everyone that made it over round the arc and up the hill managed to hang on for this lap, which is kind of pretty much what you expect. They calm down a wee bit. Derek's still in the thick of this group, and as they were, I think it was going to be the same till we hit the climb again. Looking at the distances, I think you reckon C's were approaching 18 kilometers at the moment.
Just over, yep.
So we're still only at 15.8, 15.9. We've just clicked over, so still 2 kilometers behind. So they're not gaining that quickly. The front of this group, I suspect the C's that you said that were sort of doing higher threes are probably doing not much less than the front of the Bs. So it might take quite a bit of time for this group to catch, even if they do by the end of this race. So it might not have too much impact on the C group, but Derek's sitting in this group nicely. Massive group. We're about to come around the corner in a moment. Then we'll hit the hill, which I'm sure we'll see another raft of power-ups, and another half dozen riders will probably get shed out the back of this group. But it looked like Derek was maybe struggling slightly just to hang with this group. So hopefully he's had a breather and can hang on for another lap, because he seems to be fine once he's on the flat and the downhill. But going up round the arc seems to be where everyone suffers and where we start shedding riders. But looking good, passing 1 or 2 C riders at the moment. But yeah, looking good at the moment. Back to you, James and Ian. How are they hanging on with the season of Ds?
Yeah, over to you, Ian. How's James hanging on? Is he still in there?
No, unfortunately, all 3 of them, as we suspected, because that first group was putting out some scary numbers for C riders. All 3 of them were dropped eventually. William actually hung on the longest. Freddie was dropped first. He's around about 30 seconds behind James now, and Williams dropped back. So whether that extra effort that he had to put in to really make up that, it was over a minute that he had to make up on James and Freddie, but he made up the gap. But he's now sat around about 20 seconds behind James, and it's now an individual time trial for James if that's the way that he wants the race to go ahead. I'm torn between whether that's the right thing to do or whether it's to drop back into a group to try and conserve energy for a couple more laps and then maybe make a break for it with a lap to go. I think it's still a little bit too far out. There will be more Cs passing, I'm sure, and maybe there's a group of Cs that they can all grab onto a little bit, maybe a little bit easier. But we'll see as the race progresses.
Yeah, back in the Cs, we're just about to cross the 20-kilometer mark, so we're really close to halfway now, and 20 kilometers in under 30 minutes, so definitely shifting, and still all grouped up as you'd expect. Group is still probably about 20 strong. Nathan's doing a great job in there, currently sat 12th wheel. We're just past the pens, and we can see the finish line on the other side of a road. But we're just coming down towards the bottom section of a race, and not a lot has changed. And so we'll have, I think, 3.5 laps to go. But just getting down to the bottom of the downhill, things starting to flatten out again. And we'll flip over quickly to Gordon to find out what's going on with Derek and the Bees.
Yeah, so Derek, they're back on the climb back up to Arc de Triomphe. At the moment, Derek he's towards the back of the pack here. I'm just wondering whether he's going to hang on. He's probably a couple of riders behind him, but he's certainly towards the back of this pack. I can see a few looks like Steve Wilder in the C's that he's passing. We've also got Justin Chandler just behind him, another B. So he's just keeping within touching distance at the moment, but it's kind of a make or break time for his race because the gap does look to be pulling out to sort of 5 or 10 meters from the top. It looks like Bruce is the next rider just hanging on the back of the pack, but as it's just flattening out at the moment, we've still got a sort of 10-meter gap, and that peloton in front will be moving pretty quickly. So he's having a bit of a kick now. He's trying to get back on. It's kind of now or never. Otherwise, he's going to get dropped because there's no chance to catching this large group in front of him. Just going to see if he manages to get back on. Doesn't appear to have any power up or anything to help him at the moment, but there is Justin and Derek both going. Looks like he's been dropped. He's managed to get the time to send me a quick message, so I think he's maybe accepted that he's been dropped and is just going to find the next group to ride with at the moment because back on the downhill, hitting the flats, there's no chance you're getting back onto a group now like that. You might as well wait and just form a little mini group behind you, but doing very well because he's certainly sort of mid to lower Cat B at the moment, and he's hung with them for the first half of the race, so we're very well done so far. Just looks like he's got Justin Chandler with him as well, another B rider. I suspect they'll sweep up a few more C's and B's that get shed out the group in front. So if you can find a few more riders to go ride with, he should be doing pretty well. But yeah, looking good at the moment, but unfortunately just been dropped from that front fast group. So we'll see how he copes at the moment. Hopefully gets a bit more of a rest and a bit of energy for the next few laps.
Thanks, Gordon. We are just out of the tunnel in the bottom end of the course and just starting to head north again up towards the Arc de Triomphe in this little section down at the bottom. Nathan's still doing a great job hanging on in the group, which is still as big as it was and probably has been for the last sort of 15-20 minutes. But you can see Simon's in there, Ben's in there, Alan's in there as well, Bowser's in there, and just looking back, we can see a few of the D's as well. And they look to be like a minute and a half plus back now as well. So just on that note, let's quickly switch over to Ian and find out how that freeway battle's going.
Yeah, well, James has managed to eke out a lead of around about 30 seconds now. When the C group came through, they definitely split this front group up. Freddie and William and P. Wallace have formed a group behind. So I think hopefully the three of them are going to work together to try and eat into the lead that James has got himself. So far, it seems to be quite static. In fact, James has just come out of the tunnel now, and it's just got up to around about 40-second lead. So James is doing really, really well. It's probably in his mind, he's thinking, I've got around about 25, 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes actually. And can he hold this gap? Can he hold 2.5? I think he can. I think he can do it from this point. But he's got to really trust himself and stay ahead of the group. And it's whether the group behind really get it amongst themselves, jump onto another pack of C's, which I know are coming through that pack now with Lisa Jones and a few other names that we're aware of. And it's whether the pack behind can jump onto that group of C's and bridge the gap again. And then we're back into a team of three of them racing for it again. So we'll see in the next, I would say in the next few minutes, we'll see whether that actually happens or not.
And quickly switch back to Gordon and find out how Derek's getting on.
Yeah, so Derek obviously has been dropped from that main front group of Bs, but he's managed to find another little group, a bit of a mixed group. Looks like Bs and Cs, maybe even a D rider in here as well. So there's about half a dozen of them. In terms of B riders, it looks like we've got Justin Chandler here and Jerry De Bruin from the Dutch diesel cycling team. So he's got a couple of people in here that he still needs to be wary of and competing with. And I suspect as we come round, there will be more B riders that get shed from that main group at the front. So we could catch up with one or two of them as well. But so still all to play for. But at the moment, Derek seems to be the one sort of driving the pace. Whether that's because everyone else is just happy sitting in or they're all just as knackered as each other. But they are catching up with a group in front. I presume they're probably a C group. By the look of it, I can see likes of Robert Homer and it looks like Larry Jepson just in front. So this group will probably merge up and we'll see an even bigger group, a mixture of C's and B's, and then maybe even though D hanging on as we're just coming out the tunnel. Looks like a little group, about half a dozen of the riders in front at the moment. But Derek, I'm sure, is finding this pace a lot more agreeable than that front B group. We're certainly powering on, and he only managed to hold on to this group pretty well as he is pushing out the tunnel, though, 4.5 watts as they're approaching the back of that group. C riders, which there's about half a dozen of them, so we might find about a dozen riders here in a moment, all grouped up together. If they can hold together up the hill as well, they might set a good pace and pick off any B riders that get separated. But yeah, James, back to you. Are they back on the hill yet? How are they getting on?
Just about finished, actually. We're just about 50 meters away from the sprint banner, so just about finished for climb. Again, sort of mini splits occurring, but generally they're all holding together. I think Nathan might be starting to struggle a little bit on the climbs. He's definitely towards the back of the group, so he's going to have to like push on a bit just to get back on. And he's definitely doing that, holding mid 300s, 400s now, and he's back on the group. So we are under 3 laps to go now. Down to, I think, the last 18 kilometers, and we're just approaching the Arc de Triomphe yet again, and then yet again we will swing down to the downhill and then head down towards the bottom end of the course. But yep, still a big group. It's a bit more single file than it was, but I expect it's going to group all back up again on the downhill. But we're not seeing any real splits in the group as of yet, so could be a last lap battle. I'm expecting some fireworks on the last climb, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Back to you, Ian.
Yep, the group of C, I think there's around about 7 or 8 C riders that have come past. William managed to jump onto that group and has bridged the gap. So we can see that William and James are riding next to each other, both in their Rhino kits. Freddie has just dropped off this group. He was in the group the group of C's, but I think he has just been dropped on that. So he's sitting about 20 seconds back. So it's now race on really between James and William. I think they seem to be sitting at somewhere around about 2.5, 2.6, maybe even pushing 2.7. So again, James may see if he can stick with this group for as long as possible. He seems to be quite comfortable, just wedged in the middle of it. And from what I can see, William is just at the back of it. I don't think he's struggling. I think he's maybe positioning himself. No, he's just actually sprinted and gone to the front. So he's taken a turn on the front for some strange reason. But they're in a group of around about 6 or 7 C riders. So hopefully they can stick with these for at least a lap anyway. But if they can, then we'll see where it goes. The two of them now just sat at the back of the pack. So I think they've just positioned themselves there rather than dropping off. So hopefully they can stick with this group.
Gordon, quick update on Derek.
Yeah, so Derek's looking good. We're back on the climb up to the Heart of Triumph again. He's certainly on a lot more manageable pace than the front of the bees. He's doing well. It's varying between 2.5 to 3.5. Has been doing a lot of the work on this front of this group, but he's just drifted back a couple of riders now. But nice group. There must be about 10 of them in this group. Looks like about 4 B riders. A couple of Feather power-ups getting thrown down, but he's pushing up to sort of 3, even 4.5 now. So whether there's a couple of them just trying to stretch it out. Looks like maybe that's Justin Chandler on the front using the Feather power-up and just starting to pull away. So we might lose 1 or 2 riders off the back, the D that was hanging on, and there's some C riders in this group as well. So I think we're going to find it might be just the 4 B riders that emerge over the top of the hill together. But looking forward the way, there's not many B riders. The main gap to the front group looks to be a minute or more now, so there's no chance they're going to catch up with them. There's maybe 1 B rider about 40, 50 seconds ahead that's isolated. Possibly they might manage to catch up on, but at the moment, in terms of this group, Derek's back on the front, looking strong. So, but he does have 4 other riders in this group, so he's just got to watch that he doesn't do all the work for them to overtake him on the last lap, because he's doing a lot of the work at the moment. But if he's feeling good with the pace in this group, why not carry on? But he's doing pretty well at the moment as we're coming back together just at the top. I think this group's all pretty much happy with the pace that we're going at. The C riders will be appreciating the draft, and Derek's sitting in at the moment with still, I make it, this must be 2 more laps to go after this, maybe 3 laps. Losing count here for the moment, but
yeah, it's 2 laps when we go through the banner next time round, and I think just having a quick look at Zwift, it looks like the front Bs are actually still about 2 minutes behind the front Cs. So I think on a course like this, we may well see the Cs finish out on top, but obviously we will see how things pan out. But the C's are just heading down to the very, very bottom end of the course, and they'll hang left and go under the tunnel, and then head back up again. Sorry, Gordon, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
No, that's fine. Derek's obviously listening as well. He's just told me 2, so he's saying 2 laps. So 2 laps, and probably the 2.5 where it finishes on this course. It is finishes on that uphill finish, but Derek's got round the top. He's still with this nice little group. He's got the 4 B riders, and it looks like there's Larry Gibson that's managed to hang on. They've had distance 1 or 2 over the C riders that were hanging on the back. So got a nice little group of 5 at the moment. I think they'll be pretty happy. Same as we were, we'll go round and pick up 1 or 2 other odd riders on the way. I can see a W. Lynn from Herd, C rider, just 4 seconds ahead. And then we've actually got Freddie Fernandez a minute up the road. So this group might be a wee bit too fast for him, but I suspect they'll catch up at some point. But looking good at the moment. Back on the downhill, back on the easy stuff. So chance to get a rest.
Quick check to that 2-way battle in Category D.
Yep, we just approached 27 kilometres, and James and William I think, are treating this like any given Thursday in the team time trials. They're hanging on with the C's fantastically. They're even taking stints at the front, which is surprising. But the two of them are looking very comfortable here. They are putting out some good watts when need to. So I think both of them are trying really, really hard to stick with this group. I think they both realise how important this is, that if they can stick and if the other one does drop, I think that'll be the end of the race for them. So it's really who can stick with this group the longest, I think, is how this race is going to be, won or lost. And if they both stick with it, then it'll come down to a sprint. And I know both of them are keen sprinters. So we'll see what happens further down the road. Just approaching the tunnel now. So we'll see. The tunnel, although it's only a small climb, does have the potential for splitting groups like this. So we'll see what happens. There seems to be a big group of Bs swarming behind as well, which can cause disruption if some of these Cs try to jump onto that, I'm sure, within the next 30 seconds, probably just as we're coming through the tunnel. So I can predict carnage going through this tunnel. Probably best I don't talk about it because I won't have a clue what's going on.
So just back to the C's, can actually see that Michael Bales has actually dropped off the back. He's now about 13 seconds back, and he's dropped his power down to about 1.518. So based on the comments, he's put in game, basically saying he does too many races every week. I think he's probably suffering from a little bit of fatigue from all the other events he does, and I think, and I may be wrong, and I'll probably get corrected afterwards, but I think he's also done the ITT, Bullseye, and the team time trial this week. So that's definitely enough to take everything out of anyone. But back to the main Cs. Nate is still in there. He's currently 15th wheel. Group is probably maybe 20 deep. So still a really big pack, and we are just about to hit the climb for the penultimate time, just under 2 laps to go. And we have, I think, expecting 12.3 kilometers left to go. So we may be really, really close to the hour mark. So given it's a 43 kilometer race, that's pretty rapid. And Bales has just said, "I'm just watching, boys and girls. Watch out for the sprints." So I think he's just having a nice time watching the front of the field, power on, and feeling very, very happy. He's no longer pushing 3.0 watts per kilo. Gordon, how's Derek doing back there in the Bs?
Yeah, I mean, nothing much has changed really. We're pretty much as we were. Still got this group of looks like half a dozen riders. Still got at least a few more B riders in here. We still got Justin here, and also De Bruyne, and one more W Clement as well. So they're just coming down, approaching the tunnel shortly. But I mean, there's not too much really going on. It doesn't look like they're making any grounds. Or actually, the one B rider that was 50 seconds ahead now seems to only be at 11 seconds. So he's maybe feeling it as well. He'll probably drop back into this group. And then we'll have 5 B riders, I make it in this group. But looking back the way it's, there's no B riders in sight, so pretty much riding against this group at the moment. If I was him, I'd he's pushing on the front a wee bit, but make sure he's rest up as well, because certainly the race now is against this little group that you're with. There's no point pushing on too much or getting dropped from this group, but that will be the race over. But coming out the tunnel, it's pushing up again, 4 or 5 watts a kilo. So they're not taking it quite easy at the moment. Derek's sitting on the front, but as we were, it looks like we're coming up behind Freddie Fernandez in the Ds. So we might even see Freddie jump on this group for a wee while. The pace isn't too high, but Freddie might manage to hold on at least till we hit the hill and then see how we get on as we're catching that other B. The gap's down to now 6 seconds, but looking good at the moment. But I suppose the entertainment's more at the front, and with Ian and James, how did they get on? Have they managed to hold on?
Yep, the B group came and I think they took maybe 3 or 4 of the C riders. So there's a group of 6 now, 3 Ds, 3 Cs, James and William, all through the confusion of there being around about 50 or 60 riders in the whole group. The 2 of them were never were never further than about 20 centimeters away from each other. So they both kept a good eye on each other, and which is exactly what they've done ever since they've joined this group. There does seem to be some of the Cs that have dropped now back off that B group and that are now rejoining this group that just takes the numbers up to around about 7 or 8 people. So again, William and James doing really well sticking with these groups, but they just hit the incline. They're sat 3%, and they're putting out 2.53, but sat comfortably. They do look as if they're sitting comfortably. So they're sat 30, just coming up to 30.5 kilometers to go. So still 12 kilometers to go, and we'll see where this goes. And it might, if we hit the hour mark, that's generally a point where the legs can start to feel a little bit like jelly. But let's hope these two can stick with this group, and then we'll get a really good sprint race for at the finish.
Yeah, so in the C's, we just had a little bit of a split. We had a B rider who flew past, who isn't actually on Zwift Power. So I just, judging by the pace they flew past the C's, I suspect it's probably actually an A rider who's managed to accidentally enter the wrong category. But that caused a little bit of chaos because we saw some of the C's go off the front a little bit, and just going around the Arc de Triomphe, there was a gap of probably 1 or 2 seconds. But this group has managed to bring it all back in again. It's definitely thinned out a little bit. I think we're now down to probably 15 riders. We're now going back down the hill towards the bottom end of the course. 33.5k done. So we've got just under 10 to go. I think about 9.5. And they are romping down the hill at 42 kph, and they've now just hit the flat again. So this group, I think it is actually a group of 13, maybe 14, 15. But we'll see if there are any attacks on the final climb as we go through the banner next time around. But yep, so just to summarise, we had a little split, and it all came back together yet again. And we're just hitting the bottom section of the course now. Gordon, back to you.
Yeah, we are back around on the climb up to the Arc for I think this is lap 5 we're now on. So we've got about 12k to go, 44 minutes in. So we're possibly looking at the finish just over an hour with this group, possibly. Pretty much as we were in terms of the group. Derek's in here with the same group of 3 or 4 Bs. It's starting to stretch out a wee bit on the hill. 1 or 2 of the riders that we managed to sweep up on the way round are starting to struggle on this hill, with this B group pushing. In the front of it is pushing up 4.5 to 5 at some point. So Derek's managed to hang with them, but we're starting to lose. Looks like the C riders. I can see Larry and Freddie Fernandez, D rider, is now 10 seconds back. So I think that's what I expect to happen really on this hill as the Bs keep pushing. But at the moment, it's Derek versus this group of 5, 5 in total B riders in this little group. So it'll be him versus those 4 in a sort of mini race. There's not really much else to race for. There's no B riders in sight behind, and doesn't look like anyone close in front. So I think we'll carry on as we were, sucking up 1 or 2 other riders as we go round. But at the moment, looking good up this hill. He's just dropped down a draft power up, and he's going to get over the top of this hill with this group at the moment. But looking good with, I make it now probably just over 10k to go. So possibly another 20 minutes, maybe a bit under that. The pace is pretty high, as you suggest, with even this B group that's not on the front's now done over 30 kilometers in 45 minutes. So certainly a fast-paced ride, and you're not going to get back on anyone if you're not in the draft. But Derek is approaching the top of the Arc, and he'll sweep round there back onto the downhill. But he's looking comfortable sitting in the back of the group at the moment. But yeah, looking very good at the moment. But back to James and Ian. How's the front looking?
So still grouped up. We've got 1 B rider, and we've got an A in here as well. Actually, sorry, 2 Bs and an A. Actually, more than 1 A. So that could make this last climb quite interesting. We're all grouped up at the moment. 35.5 kilometers done. About 7 to go. Just crossing over 52 minutes. We're about 1 kilometer away from about a kilometre away from the start finish line, which will go under for the last time until it comes to the finish line. But yep, pretty much as we were 5 minutes ago. Still a group of 15 or so. And not much else to report, but we'll go back to that big battle for Category D. Ian.
Yep, James has done fantastically on the part of the course that can only be described as the complete slog up to the Arc de Triomphe. James was pulling the Sea Riders up, and I think he felt that was his time to go, and he was throwing down 3.5 all the way up, and has managed to create a gap of around about 20 seconds to William, and he's now got 3 Sea Riders and he's sat in a comfortable group. I can see William is trying so hard to bridge the gap, but I just don't know whether he has the other riders around him that are going to be able to bridge that. I think James is moving from kind of 2.5 to just below 2, so he's obviously aware of his position compared to where William is, and he's managing that. He's just gone out front of the other Sea Riders, so he's obviously concerned. He wants to push out a little bit more of a gap on this part of the course, to hopefully then be able to get up to the Arc de Triomphe again, and then enjoy it coming back down the other side. But he's doing really, really well. He's currently 25 seconds ahead of William, and I can see William is trying really, really hard to bridge that gap, but it just doesn't seem to be. Every time William is trying to do that, then James reacts. So they're racing really, really well.
Yeah, really tough ask on a course like this, but it's mainly flattish with a little bit of a climb up towards the top section to bridge that sort of gap. So I think James has probably got it covered, but definitely all the best of luck to William on the last lap to try and bring it back, especially with the hill. But we'll certainly see how that pans out. We are on the final lap for the Seas. We're at 37 kilometres with just over 5.5 to go, and we are just about to go over the roundabout that you can't actually see in the game, but you can see on the map, which essentially signifies the start of the probably a 2-minute climb up towards the Arc de Triomphe. But Nate is still in there. He's doing a fantastic job. As I've said before, we've got a couple of B riders in there. I think we had a couple of A's as well. We're just seeing a couple of D riders in front who I think we might be lapping. But everyone's throwing down their power ups at the moment. Doesn't look like Nate's got a feather power up for the hill, but he's still pushing up. We're not seeing any massive attacks like I thought we might do on the final climb, but the field is still definitely stringing out a little bit, and Nate's definitely going to have to push out the numbers to make sure he hangs on over the top. But we can see the sprint banner now. It's not far away, about probably 200-300 meters, so not too far to go. But there is a little bit of a split forming at the front of this group, and everyone's trying very, very hard to bridge it back. Nate's about 5 wheels. It's about a 5-wheel gap now. Has he got enough to push it back on again? There is definitely a gap forming, and he's got someone who's just overtaken him who he might be able to just hang on to, and he's pushing out 3.5 watts per kilo, 400 watts. And it looks like he may well get back on. So that's a really, really big push, a really, really key moment. But there is still a gap of about 5 meters now. He needs to push really, really hard. Just going under the sprint banner now. He needs to push really, really hard just to get back on. He's still holding over 350 watts, but he needs to push 400, 500 to try and get back on again. Has he got anything left? I'm not entirely certain, but this gap is still about 5-10 meters, and I think they are just starting to pull away, which is heartbreaking. But I think that could be his hopes of winning the race just disappearing as we just approach the Arc de Triomphe. And I don't think he's getting this back unless he's got something monumental going down the hill. But they're all going to be grouped up then, so they're all going to have draft. Unless he can pull out a mini sprint here, I don't think he's getting it back. And he's pretty much going through exactly what I went through on Wednesday night in the mini crit, just watching them sail away into the distance. But so Nathan's sat in 13th position. I don't think he's going to pick up many more than that. But He's got a gap now of about 5 seconds to a rider behind. So whether or not he can hold that going down the hill, he's going to have to push pretty hard the whole way down. But we'll certainly see. And he's now thrown down an aero power up to at least try and catch on to the rider in front, who was about a second in front. But it looks like he's given up a ghost as well, having probably burnt out trying to hang on to this group. But it looks like the last climb was the fatal one. But check back in with me in a couple of minutes and I'll let you know how he's getting on. Gordon, back to the bees.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way you sort of tend to get dropped over the top there was very much like what happened with Derek, and I suspect everyone in this race, that's really the pinch point when you come around the top of the arc after the long slog up the hill, and beyond that, there's not really a chance getting back on. So hit the hill and go for it. But Derek, pretty much as we were, all 5 riders, they're all 5B riders in this little group. So I think they all know what the deal is now. They're just riding against each other as we're coming round, just spying where we are. So we'll be heading up towards Arc de Triomphe again. Derek seems to think going to be an uphill finish, which probably doesn't suit him. So he might have a plan to attack. I'm not quite sure where the best point to attack for Derek would be. Certainly not probably waiting for the final sprint finish, because that won't be as most optimistic. Just looking at the sprints that there's a couple of strong sprinters. He's probably towards the lower end of this group of 5 in the sprinting. So if I was him, depending how I feel, I wouldn't be waiting for the sprint, but whether you even try and push up the uphill to Arc de Triomphe and then hold out for the rest of the lap. But I think that is too long as well. Given the options, I'd maybe try and push just coming out the tunnel and just give it everything then, because I think this group of B riders in front of them, it looks like they've all got quite a strong sprint. So for me, I would use the draft to the full effect till we get back round to the tunnel, and then just try and go for it then, unless you can split this group on the uphill here. But 5B riders, I think they all know the deal, what's going on. They're all pretty strong. Quite similar, actually, some of them really. There's one of them in Charlie looks like an Argentinian rider, is capable of 4.2 for 20 minutes and has a very good sprint as well. So riders the likes of that, you're probably not going to beat them if you wait for the last 50 metres. But looking good, just coming up to the top of the Arc de Triomphe at the moment. So we shall see if any attacks or anything develop. Certainly if I was Derek, I wouldn't be waiting for the last 100 metres I'd give a go at something before that. But how's James and Ian getting on?
Yep, James is doing fantastically. He's just approaching the Arc de Triomphe for the final time, I think. I'm sure he'll be happy about that. He's just thrown down a feather to stick with this group of 3C riders that he's found himself in. But he's thrown down 3 watts per kilogram. Just dropped that down to 2.5 to 3. So he's working hard to stick with this group. William seems to have dropped off to around about a minute now. So whether he's just not been...
Williams maybe had a mechanical, so
right,
he might not be there at all, but we'll see.
He seems to be dropping back very quickly now. He was around about a minute behind, and I don't think he could find the right group. There is P. Wallace, who is around about 40 seconds behind, but he doesn't appear to be on Zwift Power. So it looks like James has this race in the bag. But let's not assume anything until he's across that line. I'm sure he can work it out for himself where he is positioned. He's positioned himself perfectly to take this. He just needs to make sure he keeps pedaling and keep those wheels turning.
So back to the seas. Nate's managed to catch on to one rider, but the front group is about a minute up the road now, from what I can see. 45 seconds to a minute up the road. So they, I think they will have been about 10 strong going down the hill. So they'll obviously have had quite a big draft to keep the pace up. But Nate managed to catch up onto one of the guys who did get dropped by that front group, who are obviously pushing particularly hard, going over the top of the hill and then round the Arc de Triomphe. But so it's down to these two really for 11th and 12th place. It's Aneth Telexia, a Spanish rider, riding for the Z España team, and they have around about 1 kilometre to go, just going under the tunnel and just climbing back out again before we head back north towards the finish line. So we'll have a just around the corner now, and then we'll have a left and a right, and then it's the drag towards the finish. So just over an hour and 2 at the moment. So it looks like probably going to finish inside an hour and 5, which for a 43 kilometre race is particularly rapid. So we'll probably be looking at an average pace of around about 40 kilometres an hour. But Nathan's actually looks like he's going well. He's gone relatively hard fairly early. He's holding about 3.2 watts a kilo at the moment, and the Spanish guy just behind him is having to push pretty hard at about 3.6, 3.8 to try and get back on again. And he's looks like he's going to do that. But he certainly had to burn a match or two to do so. So originally, I believed our full distance was going to be 42.8. It's looking like it's going to be slightly over, so probably just slightly over 43 kilometres. But we are going to do a left and a right, and then the finish line will come up very, very quickly. So I think we're down to probably the last 500 metres now. Nate is still leading this train of 2. Now, does he want to be leading? That's the next question. And does he have much of a sprint left after a decent push down the hill? So just taking that left-hand turn that I mentioned, and then we'll be doing a right very shortly. And pretty much as soon as he's seen the right, he should just about be able to see the finish banner. But the Spanish riders dropped 5 meters behind again. Nate's pushing 300 watts again. We can see the finish banner. Nate's pushing out 500 watts. He's going pretty early just to try and make a gap, and the gap's now 10 meters, and he's still pushing really hard, and his legs must be absolutely screaming. Still holding over 400 watts. Gap's now 30 meters. So he's got this in the bag, I'd say. The Spanish riders giving up the ghost, holding about 1.5. So great job from Nathan. 11th place out of 52, which is a fantastic result, and did ever so well. An awful shame, but he wasn't able to just hang on going over the top of that last climb, but he's done really, really well. So going to switch to Gordon, I think. Are you next to go over the line?
I think I'm not sure if we are. Might be. I think we're just a wee bit behind Ian and James. I don't know whereabouts is James. Ian, do you know?
We're just at the end of the Champs-Elysees, just coming round to the tunnel. We're not quite at the tunnel yet, but James it seems to be riding comfortably now, between 2.5. He's obviously been practicing his CCAT riding, which I'm sure very soon he will be doing on a weekly basis as he is promoted. He has rode fantastically in this series, and this is just another race that he has done really, really well. Tactically, he's done it perfectly. He's jumped on groups when he's needed to, and has rode hard when he's needed to try and create those gaps. He has created the gaps that he's needed to do, and found the right groups. Sometimes races like this just happen. But he's sat comfortably now at around about 2, 2.1, 2.2, which we all know that he can do that for the next 2 to 3 kilometers. So I think this is in the bag. Just turning into the tunnel.
Yeah, and Derek's group's not a million miles behind. We're on the straight before the tunnel. Still this nice little group of 5 riders, so no one's really gone for any attacks yet. We've actually picked up, looks like, I think it's a P rider, I believe, or P Wallace. So that shows you the pace at the moment. It's not too high. It's probably around about 3 watts a kilo at the moment. So they're not really pushing it. So it'll be interesting if any of them they're all just sitting in for the sprint, or if any of them might maybe go for a kick through the tunnel. Would be an opportunity for some of them, because certainly looks like they've got some good sprints in this little group here. We'll just probably about 200-300 meters before we hit that tunnel. But we'll cut back to you briefly there, Ian. How's James getting on?
Yeah, we've just gone down into the tunnel. Same group of 4, I believe. There's a few featherweights been thrown. We're just coming out the other side. Again, James sat comfortably within the group. Doesn't seem to be struggling. Maybe the 3 Sea Riders might start racing as it comes down to the last the last half kilometre or kilometre. But James is sat comfortably. He's even throwing out 3.2, 3.4. I think he wants to stick with this group and race with them over the line. He's raced with them for half of the race already, so I'm sure he doesn't want to be left behind. So it will be in the next. Is it 42.2? I just can't quite see where he is in comparison. No, he's just on the back of the group. I'm just probably lining up one of his sprints. As James said before, we'll take a left and a right, and then, as far as I'm aware, the finish line is quite soon after that. So we are just approaching that left-hand turn. There is a group of 2 riders in front, which looks like an A and a C rider. So I don't think they're going to come into it. But maybe these 3 C riders that have stuck together, knowing most races, there'll be a sprint for the last half kilometre. James has positioned himself well. He does have a very good sprint on him as well. So we'll see how he does against these C riders. So we've taken the left turn, just going through that straight. Coming to the right turn now. And I think it's a couple of 100 metres up here. You can see the banner. James is just starting to fire out 3.2, 3.3, and everyone around him as well, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. Still sitting as a group at a higher pace. James has just suddenly broken to 5.8, 5.9, 6.5, and he's raced ahead of them. Although there are some red numbers following him. So definitely there's 2 of the 3 C riders. Two of the C riders have overtaken him. So out of the group of 4 that he's followed, he managed to take 3rd place, which is fantastic. And 1st place in the DCATs. Well done, James. Fantastic.
Yeah, good result. And Derek's not far behind. We're just hitting the sprints as well. I can see he's got a feather power up with a couple of arrows and a truck. He's sprinting going at the moment, 6-7 watts a kilo. He's sitting in 4th wheel. He might just pip it into 3rd in this group. No, it looks like he finished 4th in this group, which is not bad. I mean, all the riders tried to kick out that tunnel, so they maybe all had the same idea. Not really got a chance to get away from anyone, but bit of a sprint finish there. I think Derek's done pretty well. Pretty much like the other riders, it's at the top of the arc is where you lose any, get dropped from the rest. But good job, Derek, and the rest of the riders there. So thanks very much for everyone listening. Back to you, James.
Thanks, Gordon. And as ever, a big thanks to Damon. Thanks to Gordon and Ian for keeping me company tonight. Thank you and congratulations to our riders tonight and to everyone that's been listening. Thank you very much and good night.